Okay, in this video, we are breaking down Under Armour, the clothing brand. I am in no way affiliated with Under Armour. However, I have applied some of the strategies and tactics that I use to audit businesses in their market and when they work with us. And I found a few problems with our current landscape, current business. They are getting dominated by Nike. In 2015, they were competing well with Nike, and now 10 years later, they are falling way behind. But there's also been a lot of change and a lot of other companies that have came up to challenge Under Armour, and their revenue numbers don't look the best, or at least the ones that I've seen and found. So we're challenging a few things today. I'm going to be speaking to the AI bot, and we're going to go through a few things like how many CEOs they've had. It's like a bit of a revolving door. We're going to look at some of the big plays that they made with tech and going into women's clothing. And then we're also going to get to the end of this and come up with a bit of a counter position for them that they could take. Because yeah, I love Under Armour clothing. I think it's a great business, a great product. But as we know in this world, it doesn't matter how good your product is or service is. If you don't position it correctly, the market decides for you. So enjoy the video.
Right. Whenever you're ready, give me the summary and we'll find the position.
Okay, today we are looking at Under Armour clothing, and I'm going to be giving you all the context. I have run the report. We had some good feedback from our last video on Gymshark. People wanted more data, so they'll get more data. I'm going to talk about the competitor mapping. We're going to talk about the research that we've done. We're going to talk about the counter positioning, as well as some big decisions that Under Armour made that has cost them. We're talking about their sort of personal brand, or at least their timeline of what they've been pushing publicly. And then we'll look at some of the positioning gap that they've left, some data points, but most importantly, how can they get back to the glory days?
Okay, that's a lot to unpack. Let's start with the core of it. What's the sea of sameness you're seeing in their market, and where's the most promising gap?
Well, before we answer that, I think it's worth noting that when we ran the research, the competitive ladder in 2015 versus 2025, the 2015 position was owned, number one position was owned by Nike, and in 2025 it is still Nike. Number two ranked in 2015 was Under Armour. 2025 position for Under Armour is between 4 and 5, so it's on a decline. Number 3 is Adidas. They in 2015, and in 2025 they're around second or third. They float. And then there's the challengers like Lululemon and non-existent really, but kind of floating around that top 5 and outwards is On, Hoka. Those are the fastest growing sort of footwear places.
So Under Armour has dropped significantly. The key then is to understand why that happened and what space they've abandoned that a new position could occupy. What did they used to own that they've now lost?
Yeah, so looking at the insight from the deeper research, Under Armour didn't just lose ground to Nike. It obviously got squeezed by On, Hoka, Lululemon, Gymshark. It's kind of too big to be scrappy, too small to outspend Nike, no design edge to fend off. And once we go into in fact, we'll do that right now. We'll go into some of the Reddit intelligence that we done when we done the research. One person said that I've been a loyal buyer since the mid-2000s, sometime around 2012. The quality took a noticeable decline. Thinner fabrics, lower quality stitching, elimination of elastane from products that used to contain it. And someone else said, I still own Under Armour shirts from 8 years ago that are still in great condition. Everything purchased from 2012 onward has since fallen apart and been thrown away. So that's the quality issue that we're looking at before we go into some big moves that Under Armour's made.
That's a critical insight. So the declining quality is a major factor. It sounds like they moved away from what made them strong. The sea of sameness might be about performance wear, but their original position was tied to durability and lasting quality, which they've now abandoned.
Yeah, and I think it was summed up perfectly when someone says, let's read some of these quotes from the research that we found. I just think the end game is selling the name to fanatics. Under Armour has really fallen apart as a public company. It's still a huge brand, but becoming irrelevant to younger people. I feel like the Under Armour is on the path to becoming a new Reebok and ending up at places like Walmart. And the big thing for me that really hit home when I was doing this research is Under Armour can now be found in places like TK Maxx.
That's a strong signal. Moving into discount retailers like TK Maxx confirms the perception of declining quality and brand dilution. It suggests they've lost their premium positioning. So, if they've lost their premium positioning and are now in discount stores, what does that tell us about the current sea of sameness they're swimming in? What are all their competitors saying that Under Armour is now also saying, or at least perceived to be saying?
Well, I think it's adaptability. When I think of, again, I'm biased, but when I think of the gym scene, there isn't an awful lot of people wearing Under Armour to the gym. Gymshark do really well. There's a lot of smaller brands that have popped up. Now, I'm not saying that Under Armour want to dominate the gym scene. I've always looked at Under Armour as a bit of a premium sportswear brand. The t-shirts and stuff that were always a little bit more premium than your average gym t-shirt, and they were very robust, especially for people for outdoor activities and outdoor sports. So I think we need to dig deeper a little bit more into some of the moves they've made before we find a counter position.
Okay, so the perception is they've lost their premium, robust quality, especially for outdoor activities. That's a clear shift from their original strength. What were these big moves they made that contributed to this decline?
So this is they took a 710 million tech detour from 2013 to 2015. They acquired MyFitnessPal, and a few others, and for a total of 710 million on fitness apps. They then sold MyFitnessPal in 2020 for 345 million, 130 mil loss. So management attention during the company's most critical growth years. So maybe that was the cost. They were too busy buying those fitness apps in the boom. The women's market failure. So they spent billions on campaigns. They did win awards on that, but they didn't win customers. So the brand's DNA initially was football locker rooms, and you can't paper over that with a campaign, is the big idea here. So this is the footwear miscalculation. So Curry 1, a genuine phenomenon, sold out everywhere. Curry 2, low. The internet called it a nurse's shoe. The meme was devastating. Lesson, Under Armour could find the right athletes. It couldn't consistently give them the right product. And then this final piece that I think isn't about their position in the market, but it could be a cause of the disruption in their distribution and everything else. The CEO revolving door. So they had a CEO, Kevin Blank, step down in January 2020. Patrick Frisk spent 2.5 years there, stepped down 2022. Stephanie Linnartz spent from February to April, 14 months with no sportswear experience. Kevin Plank returned in 2024. So they've had 3 CEOs in 4 years, each with a turnaround plan that never had time to materialise.
That's a lot of internal turmoil and strategic missteps. The tech detour, the failed women's market push, and the footwear miscalculation all point to a brand that lost focus on its core product and customer. The CEO revolving door just compounds that instability. So if their original strength was robust, premium sportswear for outdoor activities, and they've diluted that through quality issues and strategic blunders, what's the gap they've left open? What anxiety are they no longer addressing for their original customer base?
Yeah, so let's finish this then, because basically, with the return of that CEO, he has now said that Under Armour is a 5 billion, quote by the way, a 5 billion startup, and it's got a 3-pillar plan. reduce promotions and SKU count by 25%, increase marketing spend to 500 million, return to the underdog identity. Now, this is the problem with that statement. You can't return to the underdog when you're a $5 billion company. The underdog identity has an expiration date. Under Armour earned it when they were a scrappy challenger. Now they're the incumbent trying to cosplay as the challenger. So the gap nobody is filling right now that I prepared earlier, and we need to go back and forward on this to get something solid. Under Armour built their brand on one thing: performance for the serious athlete who doesn't care about looking good, who cares about working. That position is now vacant. Nike went lifestyle, Adidas went culture, Lululemon went wellness, On Running went design. Nobody is standing in the locker room anymore saying this is the gear for the athlete who earns it.
That's a very clear articulation of the gap. This is the gear for the athlete who earns it. It speaks to a specific mindset and a specific type of product. It's about grit, not glamour. So if that's the gap and that's what they've abandoned, the counter position would be to reclaim that. It's not about being an underdog anymore, but about serving that specific serious athlete who values performance and durability above all else.
Yep. Yeah, so, I mean, what's interesting about this, and this will be different from a lot of the videos we do with this, is that they didn't really fail from the outside. Like, Nike didn't crush them. Adidas didn't outmaneuver them. They made a series of internal decisions, chasing tech, chasing distribution, chasing the women's market, chasing Steph Curry's shoes. And each one of them pulled them from the thing that made them different. And I think that's the big thing here, is go back to what worked.
Exactly. They self-sabotaged by chasing too many different things and losing sight of their core identity. The counter position then isn't about inventing something new, but about aggressively reclaiming what they once owned. It's about saying, we are the brand for the serious athlete who prioritizes performance and durability, not trends or lifestyle.
Yep. So let's give something clean to end on, to end this full positioning audit on. What could Under Armour come out and, like, what could be their tagline to build on, to rekindle that sort of like past success that they had, to be tunnel visioned on what their very loyal initial customer base helped them get to?
Right, we've got it. Based on what we've talked about, the core idea is about reclaiming their original focus on serious performance and durability. So a line that captures that could be Under Armour, gear for the athlete who earns it, or perhaps Under Armour, performance, not pretense. Which one feels closer to the mark?
Yeah, I think we need them to own it. I think we need them to go back and just be like, this, we're back, you know. Looking at the research, like, they used to use the phrase protect this house. I think they need to go back and own it and do a bit of like self-deprecation. I think they have to be like, we're back. Remember 2015? Who has that, you know, who has the clothing from 2015, 2018? It lasted, doesn't it? Because honestly, like, there's a lot of gym wear out there and exercise clothing out there that is just not, it's not cutting it. And I think they have to do a little bit of admitting, self-discovery, and come back out. And people, the loyal people, will appreciate that honesty. So I think that has to be factored into the initial positioning.
Absolutely. Acknowledging their past missteps and reclaiming their original strength with honesty could resonate well. Something like, Under Armour, we're back to protect this house, built to last, just like before. It nods to their history, admits the lapse, and confidently states their return to form. How does that sound?
Sounds great.
Right, we've got it. Under Armour, we're backed like before. That's the position. Everything from here, the ads, the content, the website, runs through that line. If it doesn't reinforce that position, it doesn't go out. What's the first thing that changes based on this?
The first thing that changes is their website. You know, we've got a website here that is leave them in your shadow, explosive launch, maximum separation. So they're trying to obviously push towards footballers here. Now this might just be the UK version that I've landed on. Got some golf stuff. I think they have to bring back some OG clothes that just absolutely crushed it. Like I've got an Under Armour t-shirt on right now. I've had it for years. Great quality. They go back to the OGs, the OG collection.
So the immediate change is a complete overhaul of their messaging and product focus on the website, shifting from generic sports terms to highlighting durability and a return to their core high quality offerings. That makes perfect sense.
Perfect. And there you have it. Full audit complete. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments. What do you think of the audit? I'd also love to know any suggestions of companies that you would like me to do a video on. And of course, if your business is in a saturated market and you could be doing with a deep research, you could be doing with someone else coming in who's not as emotional as you, auditing your business, checking the competitive landscape, but most importantly, finding a gap and an opportunity that no one else in your industry is taking so that we can ultimately grow your business.